Hello. I'm not sure what brought you here, but I welcome you nonetheless. This will be the beginning of a series of world-building projects for an idea I've had for a while. A world of fantasy in which the magic was nuked and those who remained had to deal with the consequences of a planet now devoid of gods and unnatural forces to keep them in check. That is not an exaggeration. Atomic fission is what killed the gods. Well, kill isn't exactly the right word. You can't truly kill a god. Rather, their physical bodies have been devoured, and their conscience remains in a coma. But from their rotting carcasses, new terrors arose. The maggots that buried deep within grew in form and in size. Rats had enough power to eat the lions that once kept them at bay. Primates and amphibians drank from their blood and began to thirst for war. But what about the gods of the sea? What consumed them, and what did they turn into? What horrible new abilities did they gain? As you may have guessed, it relates to the undead, but first, a bit of background is needed. Zombies. Saying they're overused is overused, but it's easy to see why. There is something so brilliantly captivating about a monster that is us. A monster in which the mind and body is deceased, yet it walks. A monster that eats the living to satiate a hunger that can't be quenched. A monster that is the undead. But as a result of this, the dead horse that is the zombie monster has been so thoroughly beaten that the horse resembles papery leather and the metaphor has left the room. We have zombie movies, books, games, zombie horror, funny zombies, cartoony zombies, fungal zombies, alien parasite zombies, and even zombie romance, because why the hell not? It seems that any level of uncanniness that we felt from the undead has since been replaced with familiarity and, quite frankly, boredom. So, how was I supposed to take something so generic and install the fear and disgust we once felt? I had to do something new, but first I needed to ask, what makes a good zombie? The best kind of zombie, in my opinion, is a monster that is horrific to look at, but also something you feel sorry for. Some of my personal favorite designs are the Special Infected from Left 4 Dead, SCP-610, aka the Flesh That Hates, and the Headcrab zombies from Half-Life. Their designs are instantly recognizable and gross. Their ripped apart bodies and exposed flesh tell you of a monster that is deadly, otherworldly, but also in immense pain. You can't help but imagine how agonizing it was for the victim to transform into these monstrosities, and I wanted to convey that with my zombie. But what process of transformation it would go through I debated for a while. I have drawn zombies in the past for something unrelated, but that was going for something more traditional and intentionally cliché. Because of that idea of clichéness, I turned down the idea of fungal zombies, aptly titled the Shroom Dead. I liked the idea at first, mostly because it would allow for the zombies to have ranged abilities with spore bombs or something like that, it would allow for them to physically shape their environment with pillaring mushrooms, and because of the infamous real-life cordyceps. While it is neat that a zombie infection does exist in real life, The Last of Us already did that, and we do not need to be reminded of that. I then thought of a parasitic worm called tumor worms. Their design would have been inspired by this concept art of the Chernobyl worm by Louis Leroy. The design would have been fleshy and gross, but I didn't go with it because, once again, a flesh-like zombie has been done to death, and the idea wasn't entirely mine, so I wasn't happy. I wanted something that, while inspired by what came before, was original, and was completely me. Then it hit me. The zombie should be a starfish parasite. I was inspired by a trip to Florida, and it was there I saw what a coastal town looked like. Covering the entire concrete bank was a thick frosting of barnacles, with the occasional crab scuttling about. It almost seemed like the ocean was attempting to reclaim what was taken, and it was then inspiration struck. An oceanic plague, where the sea itself walks the shore and infects the living. Starfish were my first choice largely because of their hunting habits. For those of you unaware, starfish have two stomachs, an internal one and a second one that they spit out onto prey to pre-digest. So, the idea took form, a parasitic starfish that would unload its stomach contents into its victim and digest their insides, and then take over motor functions. To push the design further, I decided the stardead should infuse its DNA with the host to create a monster that had a human shape, but also the anatomy of a creature that, compared to us, might as well have come from outer space. Then, I thought to take it even further. Why just stop at mixing two creatures to form this monster? Why not have the stardead take the DNA of other organisms to create even stronger zombies? And that's how we got to where we are now. As I'm sure some of you saw, I was going to have fins on certain parts, implying that the stardead could combine multiple animals together. I decided against this as I feared that without limitations, this design would be taken too far and lose sight of what made it good in the first place. There will be one exception, which I'll get to. Besides, the star-dead infect vertebrates as their hosts, so I decided that the starfish would take DNA of ocean dwellers that lack a backbone. Additionally, I set another rule that the star-dead could only have as many features as the original animal had. Since this star-dead is combined with a red rock crab, I made sure to only include the 8 legs and 2 claws the crabs have. Once again, this is to ensure that designs don't go too overboard and also to enforce some variety. If you want a centipede monster, you have to use a creature with that number of legs and not just give the star-dead more crab legs. But even with those limitations, I found this design process to be so much fun. The star-dead hits all the criteria for what I like about zombies. It has an interesting infection process, it has cool mutations, it's very graphic, and you can't help but feel sorry for the poor sap going through it. A big part of it stems from the star-dead forcing its anatomy onto the human body. I knew when that was going to be a core part of the design that I would have fun drawing it. A mouth on the stomach, splits running down the limbs with grabbing nubs on each side, eyes on the tips of fingers, it's all there and it's horrific. I've always been disturbed when eyes appear where they shouldn't on the human body. It's why William Birkin always scared me when I was younger. I don't know about you, but I sure as shit wouldn't want to see out of my fingertips. While in an extreme exaggeration, there is truth and purpose behind it. Starfish do possess simple eyes on the ends of their arms. Starfish become much more alien the more you learn about them. If that freaks you out, then you should also know that certain jellyfish also possess functioning eyeballs. Sleep tight. Additionally, it serves some functionality, allowing the star-dead to peek around corners or while wading in mud in order to know when to ambush. Now, I know giving it 5 eyes breaks one of my rules since we as humans don't have 5 eyes, but I'm just going to say that this is the crab's compound eyes taking effect and also shut up. On another note, I also found that I liked how the colors turned out. I have to admit, I wasn't sure if I could do the colors I wanted in my mind justice, but I think what I created is pretty good. The way the starfish skin and the human skin blend together is kind of messy, but I think it conveys what I was going for pretty well. The splits have the red veiny look of exposed flesh, making it seem as if the person is in constant agony, which they are. The leg is so swollen with water and enzymes that it's turned blue. A color choice that I wasn't sure about was the larger tube feet. I was worried that the lime green would contrast too much with the pinks, but I went with it anyways, and I liked how they look. It gives the larger tube feet a sense of disgust and importance. They are stronger and are how the star-dead primarily grapple their prey to then consume or drag away, only to continue the cycle of infection. One step of this process involves the barnacles.
Barnacles, I hate the pill.
Why yes, dear viewer, this throwaway detail, which was initially conceived as something to make the star-dead seem more aquatic, has lore. The corpse barnacles, as I'll call them, share a very interesting relationship with the star-dead. When the starfish initially attaches itself to a host, it will gain control of large portions of their nervous system, at which point they will force their new meat puppet into the nearest body of water, usually one the star-dead is familiar with. Once in, the star-dead will force the host to cling onto the bottom, drowning the victim in the process. Once underwater, the star-dead begins a week-long process of reshaping the body to its needs. Any bones that aren't completely necessary are digested. The stomach area splits open, and DNA is rearranged. During this process, the corpse barnacles will attach to the star-dead and begin filter feeding, supplying the emerging zombie with extra nutrients. Once the star-dead is fully transformed, the new mutant is then the one supplying the corpse barnacles with nutrition. A parasitic symbiotic relationship, fitting for something as horrid as this thing. While I do love the design, there are some drawbacks to the ocean on land approach. Without being fully submerged, most ocean animals' basic functions wouldn't work, the tube feet of the starfish just being one example. The tube feet should be lining the splits the entire way and not just in select areas. The ability to use other animals' DNA is also beyond ludicrous, going past science fiction and into the realm of outright fantasy. Additionally, the second stomach starfish spit out is not that big, mostly because their diet is mostly shellfish. Yet, despite their appearance, these starfish are not normal. They consume the flesh of gods and now have become something else. And that's the most horrific part. They look just like normal starfish. An animal that, aside from its toxins, is seen as harmless and even friendly to most people. The star-dead are a twisted amalgamation of that trust, along with every horror the ocean could conceive. That's what I'm most proud about this design, is that factor of fear and endless possibilities, reminiscent of the sea itself. The otherworldly nature of starfish combined with the zombie and other strange sea life opens up a floodgate of possibilities. Why stop at humans? Why not infect birds or deer, or oceanic vertebrates? The usage of the DNA of other sea life gives the stardead so many abilities. Did you know that some sea urchins can release a swarm of biting mouths into the water? Or that jellyfish can create what are essentially stinging polyp grenades? Or that many stinging sea animals use harpoons to inject venom? Did you know that the tentacled siphonophore exists? Yeah, what you're looking at right now, it's real, and it's ripe for horror. A horror left behind from the dead gods in the world of Skirmish Turf. Now, while the stardead usually only take from one animal species, there is one exception: coral. A coral reef is many species of similar animals interconnected to form a beautiful ecosystem. The only reason I'm making an exception for coral is purely for aesthetics. I'm sure just taking one species of coral could work, but seeing one type of coral by itself just wouldn't seem right. A walking zombie coral reef was also just too cool of a concept to pass by. What makes this even cooler are the stinging cells coral possesses. Also, yes, I know that the harpoon stingers that ocean animals have are tiny and wouldn't work as well out of water. But come on, are you going to deny me of the harpoon zombie dream? So yeah, that's the stardead. While starfish latching onto people's heads to mind control them isn't new, neither is the idea of aquatic zombies. I've never seen an idea like this before. Not to toot my own horn, but I believe I came up with an extremely original idea. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd be curious if I am. The stardead themselves aren't that extraordinary, and that's the point. The stardead resemble a simple 5-armed starfish. I'm thinking of mostly staying with 5 arms, but if I feel like I'm up to the challenge, I might do 6 or 8 arms, not the 50-armed one. That is too many arms. But even with that, I think I've accomplished my goal, reimagining the most cliche monster into something new and interesting. While I can't promise the rest of this world building project will be this unique, I do have some great ideas I'd like to cook up. I hope you enjoyed the art and didn't get too annoyed at my yapping. I tend to get carried away with these kinds of things. I didn't give too much lore, mostly because there isn't much yet. I do plan on developing the world more, and I'll give lore on the various countries and groups that inhabit this world. Updates will be unfortunately slow, but I still plan on developing this setting even if life gets more chaotic. I'd summarize it as a diesel punk setting in a post-fantasy world with a 1980s limit on technology and a lot of World War II aesthetics. Or as my brother puts it, 20th century core. Oh, and there will be dinosaurs. Here's a sneak peek. That's all I have for now, and thank you for your viewing time. Stay safe, and hopefully I won't take forever on the next video. No promises, though.